You didn't break today, you showed up. You answered people. You handled what needed to be handled. You kept everything moving. And if someone looked at your life from the outside right now, they would probably say you're doing fine, maybe even better than fine. But there's something they don't see, something you've been carrying quietly, something that doesn't show in your routine, but never really leaves you. You're tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. Not the kind of tired that disappears after a good day. This is different. This is the kind of tired that stays with you, even when everything looks okay, and you've been trying to ignore it. You tell yourself it's just a phase, that you'll get through it, that you've handled worse before, but deep down you know this isn't the same, because before you used to recover. Now you just continue. You push through, you keep going, but you don't feel restored anymore. And that's the part that's been quietly bothering you. There was a moment recently, maybe a small one, where everything slowed down just enough for you to notice it. You paused for a second, and in that second, something felt off. Not dramatic, not loud, just heavy. And instead of staying there, you moved. You distracted yourself. You went back to doing, because stopping, even for a moment, felt uncomfortable, almost dangerous. Because you knew if you stayed there long enough, you would have to face something real, something you've been avoiding. You're not just tired from what you do, you're tired from what you carry, from what you hold in, from what you don't say, from what you keep managing internally. While everything on the outside keeps moving, and you've been doing this for so long that it became normal. You became the person who handles things, the one who doesn't stop, the one who doesn't fall apart, the one who keeps going no matter what. And for a long time that worked. It helped you survive, it helped you move forward, it helped you stay in control. But now, it's costing you something, because you never stopped, you never released. You never allowed yourself to slow down long enough to feel what's actually going on inside you. And now it's all there, not organized, not processed, just present and heavy. You feel it in your body, in your mind, in the way your energy doesn't come back like it used to, in the way small things feel bigger than they should, in the way silence feels louder than noise. And you've noticed it. Even if you haven't fully admitted it yet, there's a quiet thought that has crossed your mind more than once. I don't think I can keep going like this. And the moment that thought appears, you push it away. You tell yourself you don't have time to feel that. You go back to what needs to be done, because that's what you've trained yourself to do. But ignoring it hasn't made it go away, it just made it quieter and heavier. And now, you're here, listening to this, not by accident, because something inside you is starting to ask for a different way, not more effort, not more strength, something else, something you haven't allowed yourself to consider yet. So don't rush this moment, don't skip ahead, just stay here for a second and answer this honestly, without trying to fix it. How long have you been feeling like this? Not just tired, but deeply so internally since worn out. No quick answer, no automatic response. Just notice. Because this is where things begin to shift. Not when you push harder, but when you stop pretending you're okay. And that takes more courage than continuing. So stay here just for a moment. This is the first time in a while you're not running from it, and that matters more than you think. You've been performing strength for so long that you don't even realize when you're doing it anymore. It's automatic now. You respond the right way, you say the right things, you show up how people expect you to show up. You keep everything stable, predictable, under control, but inside it doesn't feel stable, it feels managed. And there's a difference. Because managing something is not the same as being okay. Managing is effort, constant effort, quiet effort, invisible effort. The kind that nobody thanks you for is because nobody sees it. And you've gotten really good at it. So good. that even you started believing you were fine, until small things began to expose the truth. Moments where your patience ran out faster than usual. Moments where you felt irritated but couldn't explain why. Moments where you wanted to be alone, not to rest, but to escape. And that confused you, because nothing big happened. There was no single event, no clear reason. Just a growing weight, without a name. And instead of stopping to understand it, you adapted again. You adjusted your behavior. You tried to fix the symptoms, be more disciplined, be more focused, be more in control. But it didn't work. Because the problem wasn't lack of discipline, it wasn't lack of strength, it was accumulation. Everything you didn't process, everything you didn't say, everything you carried silently, started stacking, layer by layer. And now it's not one thing, it's everything at once. And that's why it feels confusing, because you can't point to a single cause, but you feel the effect every day, in your energy, in your thoughts, in your reactions. And maybe there was a moment recently where this became undeniable. You were alone, no distractions, no noise, and instead of feeling peace, you felt pressure, like something inside you was waiting to be acknowledged, but you didn't stay there. You moved again, because staying means feeling, and feeling means facing, and facing means admitting that something isn't right, and that's uncomfortable for you, because you've built your identity on being the one who handles things, the one who doesn't stop, the one who keeps going. But what if that identity is exactly what's exhausting you now? What if the version of you that once protected you is now the one that's draining you? That's not failure, that's evolution, because what worked before isn't meant to carry you forever. But you never stopped long enough to update how you live. You just kept applying the same strength to a situation that requires something different. And now your body is signaling it. Your mind is signaling it. Your emotions are signaling it. Not loudly, but consistently. And you feel it, even if you don't fully understand it yet. So don't rush past this. Stay here and ask yourself something. Honestly, not what you think you should feel, but what you actually feel right now. Is it pressure? Is it exhaustion? Is it emptiness? Is it all of it mixed together? You don't need to organize it. You don't need to solve it. You just need to acknowledge it, because this is where the shift begins, not in action, but in awareness. And you're already stepping into it. That matters more than you think. There's a reason you don't slow down, and it's not just habit. It's not just routine. It's fear, because somewhere along the way, you realize that if you stop, things surface. Thoughts you've been pushing away, feelings you didn't have time to process, questions you didn't want to answer, and staying in motion became your way of avoiding all of it. Not consciously, but effectively. You kept yourself busy, focused, productive, always doing something, because doing gave you distance from feeling, and for a long time, that worked. It protected you. It helped you stay functional. It helped you keep control. But now, it's backfiring, because what you avoided didn't disappear. It waited, it stayed, it built up, and now every time things get quiet, you feel it. That tension, that pressure, that discomfort that doesn't have a clear shape, and your instinct is still the same. Move, distract, do something, anything. Just don't stay there. But here's the truth you've been circling around. The discomfort you feel when you slow down is not the problem. It's the signal. It's everything inside you, asking to be seen, to be processed, to be released. And the more you avoid it, the heavier it becomes, because now you're not just carrying what happened, you're carrying what was never dealt with. And that's exhausting. You feel tired, Not because life is too much, but because nothing inside you has had space to settle. And settling requires stillness, but stillness feels unfamiliar to you now, almost threatening. Because in stillness, there's no distraction, no escape. Just you, and everything you've been holding. But here's where something shifts. What if stopping isn't what breaks you? What if stopping is what finally relieves you? What if the thing you've been avoiding is actually the doorway to feeling lighter again? That doesn't mean it's easy, it won't be. Because feeling what you've been avoiding takes honesty, takes presence, takes letting your guard down, even if just a little. But continuing like this is already costing you more. You feel it, that constant low-level exhaustion, that sense of carrying too much, that subtle pressure that never really leaves. So maybe the question isn't, how do I keep going like this? Maybe the question is, what happens if I allow myself to stop? Just for a moment. Not forever. Not dramatically. Just enough to listen. Just enough to feel. Just enough to understand what's actually going on inside you. Because until you do, you'll keep trying to fix something you haven't fully faced. And that never works. So right now, don't rush, don't escape, stay here. Just for a moment and notice what comes up when you don't move. That's where the truth is. And that's where change begins. You've been telling yourself a story for a long time. A quiet one, subtle, but powerful. That being strong means you don't stop. That being strong means you handle everything. That being strong means you don't let things get to you. And you built your life around that. You became reliable, consistent, unshakable, the person people can count on, the one who doesn't fall apart. And for a long time, that identity gave you stability. It gave you direction. It gave you purpose. But now, it's starting to cost you. Because you didn't just become strong. You became unavailable to yourself. Every time something affected you, you minimized it. Every time something hurt, you pushed through it. Every time you needed space, you ignored it. And over time, you trained yourself to disconnect from your own signals, from your own limits, from your own needs. And now, you're feeling the consequence of that. Not as a breakdown, but as a constant weight, a low-level exhaustion that doesn't go away. Because strength, without awareness, turns into pressure. Pressure to keep going. Pressure to maintain control. Pressure to never slow down. And that pressure doesn't release on its own. It builds, quietly, until you reach a point like this, where continuing the same way feels heavier than questioning it. And that's where you are now, right at that edge, where something inside you is asking for a different approach. But another part of you resists, because if you stop being the strong one, who are you? If you don't handle everything, what happens? If you don't keep it together, does everything fall apart? That's the fear, and it's real. But here's what you haven't considered yet. What if your definition of strength is outdated? What if real strength now, say, is not in holding everything together, but in allowing yourself to adjust, to reassess, to respond differently? Because strength is not about endurance without limits. It's about knowing your limits and respecting them. And that's something you haven't been doing, not because you didn't want to, but because you never learned how. You only learned how to continue. So now, you're being invited into something new, something unfamiliar, something that feels uncomfortable at first, but necessary. To stop measuring your worth by how much you can carry, to stop proving your strength by how much you can endure, and to start asking a different question, not how much more can I take, but what do I actually need right now? That question changes everything, because it brings you back to yourself, back to awareness, back to truth. And that's where real strength begins, not in resistance, but in alignment. So stay here for a moment and ask yourself, honestly, what do you actually need right now? Not what's expected, not what's required, but what is real for you in this moment. You don't have to act on it yet, just recognize it, because that recognition is the beginning of change. There are things you've been carrying that were never meant to stay with you this long, not because you chose them, but because you never stopped to question them. Expectations, responsibilities, emotional weight that didn't start with you, but somehow ended up in your hands. And you held them, at first because you thought you had to, then because you got used to it, and eventually because you didn't even notice anymore. It just became part of how you exist, you carry, you manage, you sustain, without asking if it still makes sense, without asking if it still belongs to you. And that's where the exhaustion deepens. Because carrying something heavy is one thing. Carrying something heavy that isn't yours is something else entirely. It drains you differently, it confuses you, because you don't always understand why you feel so overwhelmed. Your life might look manageable, your responsibilities might even seem reasonable, but the internal weight doesn't match the external reality. And that's the signal that something in what you're holding needs to be re-evaluated. Not everything you carry is your responsibility. Not everything you feel is yours to solve. Not everything you've taken on needs to stay with you. But letting go of that idea is difficult for you, because somewhere along the way, you connected value with responsibility. You connected worth with how much you can handle. So if you carry less, it feels like you're doing less, like you're becoming less. But that's not true. That's just the belief you learned. And now it's time to challenge it. Because continuing like this is costing you your peace. And peace is not supposed to be this rare. Not supposed to be this distant. It's supposed to be something you can access even in the middle of responsibility. But not when you're carrying everything at once. So now, there's a shift available to you. A quiet one, but powerful. To start asking yourself, what am I holding? That doesn't belong to me anymore. What am I continuing just because I always have? What am I afraid to release, even though it's draining me? You don't need all the answers right now, but you need the question, because the question creates awareness, and awareness creates space, and space is what you've been missing. So stay with that for a moment. You don't have to drop everything. You don't have to make drastic changes, but you can begin to loosen your grip just a little. And that alone starts to change how heavy everything feels. You've been trying to control everything, not just your actions, not just your environment, but your emotions too. Every time something uncomfortable shows up, you try to fix it. You try to adjust it. You try to move past it as quickly as possible. And on the surface, that looks like control. It looks like maturity. It looks like strength. But underneath, it's avoidance. Because you're not actually processing what you feel. You're managing it, containing it, redirecting it. And that works for a while. But emotions that aren't processed don't disappear. They wait. They resurface. They find other ways to show up. Through tension, through irritation, through exhaustion, through that constant feeling that something isn't right, even when everything seems fine. And that's where you are now. Not overwhelmed by one big emotion, but worn down by many small ones that were never fully felt. And you've gotten used to responding the same way. Fix it, control it, move on. But what if that approach is exactly what's keeping you stuck? What if the reason you feel this constant weight is because nothing inside you has been given space to complete its cycle? To be felt, to be understood, to be released, because feeling something fully is what allows it to pass. But interrupting it keeps it active, keeps it stored, keeps it present, and over time, that becomes heavy. So now, there's a different approach available to you. Not control, not correction, presence. Just being with what's there, without trying to change it immediately. And I know that's uncomfortable for you, because you're used to doing something, solving something, improving something. But this is different. This is about allowing, and allowing feels passive. But it's actually one of the most powerful things you can do, because when you allow, you create space for things to move, to settle, to release naturally, without force. So right now, instead of trying to fix how you feel, just notice it, stay with it for a moment, without judgment, without pressure, without needing it to change, and see what happens. Because this is where real internal relief begins, not in control, but in awareness, and in permission. Permission to feel without immediately reacting. Permission to be without needing to perform. And that changes something inside you, even if it's subtle, even if it's quiet. It changes, because for the first time in a while, you're not running from yourself. And that matters more than anything right now. There's something else you've been feeling, and maybe you haven't said it out loud. That quiet sense of distance, not from people, from yourself, and even from God. And that confuses you, because you didn't stop believing. You didn't walk away. You didn't turn your back. You're still here, still trying, still holding on, but it doesn't feel the same. Something feels quieter, less present, less alive, and a part of you starts wondering, what changed? Did I do something wrong? Did I lose something along the way? But here's what you need to understand. This distance you feel is not absence, it's overload. When you carry too much for too long, your internal space gets crowded, your thoughts get louder, your emotions get heavier, your energy gets lower. And in that state, you don't stop believing, you just lose sensitivity. You lose the ability to notice what's already there because your system is overwhelmed. And when you're overwhelmed, everything subtle becomes harder to perceive, and the presence of God is often subtle. Not forced, not loud, not overwhelming. It's quiet, steady, constant, but you've been surrounded by internal noise, thoughts, pressure, unprocessed weight, and all of that creates interference. So it's not that God stepped away, it's that you've been too overloaded to feel the connection the way you used to, and that changes everything. Because now, and there's no guilt, no need to question your faith, no need to assume something is wrong with you spiritually. You're just tired, deeply tired, and your system needs space again, because connection doesn't come from effort, it comes from openness, from stillness, from space. And space is what you've been missing. So instead of asking, why does God feel distant? Try asking, what inside me is so full that I can't feel what's already here? That question brings you back to awareness, back to honesty, back to what actually needs attention, because reconnection doesn't start by forcing something spiritual. It starts by reducing what's blocking it. And that begins with something simple. Less noise, less pressure, less internal weight. And slowly, very slowly, your sensitivity returns. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gently, naturally, because the connection was never gone. It was just covered. So right now, you don't need to feel something powerful. You don't need to create an experience. You just need to allow space, and that's enough, more than enough. You've been trying to fix this by doing more, more discipline, more control, more effort to get back to how you used to feel. But the more you try, the more distant it feels. And that frustrates you, because you're not used to things that don't respond to effort. You've always been able to push through, adjust, figure it out. But this doesn't work that way, because what you're dealing with now is not a problem to solve. It's a state to shift, and states don't change through pressure. They change through release, through adjustment, through letting something inside you settle. And that's the part you've been resisting, without even noticing. You've been approaching your own exhaustion, the same way you approach everything else, trying to overcome it, trying to outwork it, trying to control it. But exhaustion doesn't respond to control. It responds to permission. Permission to slow down. Permission to not have everything figured out. Permission to not perform strength for a moment. And that feels uncomfortable for you, because your default is action, movement, solution. But this moment is asking something different. It's asking you to stop treating yourself like a problem and start treating yourself like a person who needs space, needs breath, needs pause. Because the more you treat this like something to fix, the more pressure you create. And pressure is exactly what's been exhausting you. So instead of asking, how do I get back to normal? Try asking, what if I don't need to go back, but move forward differently? That question changes everything, because now you're not chasing a version of yourself from the past. You're allowing a new version to form, one that doesn't rely only on endurance, one that includes awareness, boundaries, space. And that version of you doesn't burn out the same way. But it starts here, in this shift, from control to permission, from pressure to space, from fixing to allowing. And you don't need to do it perfectly. You just need to start noticing when you're forcing and gently pull back, even if just a little, even if just for a moment, because those small moments are where your system begins to reset, where your mind starts to quiet, where your energy starts to return. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to feel the difference. Enough to breathe again. And that's where everything begins to change. You don't need to prove anything anymore. Not today. Not in this moment. Not by pushing through again. Because the truth is, you've already proven enough. You've shown up when it was hard. You've carried more than most people realize. You've kept things together when it would have been easier to fall apart. That's not in question. What's in question now is how long you're going to keep doing it the same way. Because continuing like this has a cost, and you feel it, not as a breakdown, but as a slow drain, a constant weight, a version of yourself that keeps going, but doesn't feel restored. And that's not how this is supposed to be. You weren't meant to live in constant recovery mode. You weren't meant to survive every day. You were meant to have space, to breathe, to feel something other than pressure. And that starts with one decision, not a big one, not a dramatic one, a simple one. To stop just for a moment, trying to be strong, not forever. Just long enough to be real, to admit, I'm tired, without adding anything after it, without justifying it, without minimizing it, just truth, because that truth creates space, and space is what allows everything else to begin shifting. You don't need to fix your whole life tonight. You don't need to figure everything out. You don't need to become a new person overnight. You just need to stop holding everything at once, even if just for a few minutes, even if just internally. And in that moment, something changes. Your body softens, your mind slows down, the pressure eases, just enough. And in that space, you remember something you forgot. You're not alone in this. Not in a motivational way, in a real way, even in your silence, even in your exhaustion, even in this exact moment. You are being held, not by your strength, not by your control, but by something greater than both. And you don't have to force that. You don't have to feel it perfectly. You just have to stop resisting it, even if just a little, and that's enough. For now, that's enough. So don't rush out of this moment. Don't go back immediately to carrying everything again. Stay here for a second. Breathe. Let your shoulders drop. Let your mind slow down. You don't need to solve anything right now. You just need to rest. For real this time. Because tomorrow, you will move again. But not from exhaustion. From awareness. From a little more space. From a little more truth, and that changes everything. Have a peaceful night. Rest well. Tomorrow will be a new day.